can be very scary and confusing for you and your loved ones, especially with scammers calling and so many commercials. That's why you need a local expert that you can trust. Call Angela Hatcher today at 229-938-7116. That's 229-938-7116.
Good character, sound judgment, maturity, social awareness, and a commitment to serve all people are characteristics that your Chief Magistrate must possess. As a candidate for Crisp County Chief Magistrate, I offer these characteristics to you, and I ask for your vote and your support. We're living in a crucial time. Many things have changed, but my commitment to serve the citizens of Crisp County has never wavered. Whether you vote by mail-in ballot, early vote, or go to the polls on Tuesday, November 3rd, I'm Isaac Owens, and I ask for your vote and your support.
Recovery from mental and substance use disorders is real.
You can recover.
It's possible. It happens every day.
Never give up on yourself.
Discover hope and help.
The world is a beautiful place again.
Join the Voices for Recovery. For confidential information for mental and substance use disorders, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Cordials WSST, because local matters.
Yes, the J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class, and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor, president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Miss Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr. Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after viewing our program. The family of Deacon Arthur James McEntee of Lilly, Georgia, the family of little Jace Adore Hawkins of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Louise Denise Barron of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Deacon Arthur James McEntee, age 80, of 130 Oak Street, Lilly, Georgia, died Saturday, October 10th at the home of his son in Albany, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Deacon Arthur James McEntee was held Saturday, October 18th, Sunday, October 18th, at the Forest Chapel Church Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. His pastor, Reverend Willie Green, pastor of the Forest Chapel Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Mr. Willie James McEntee and his wife, Mrs. Jackie McEntee of Columbia, South Carolina, Mr. Wilbert Leon Davis and his wife, Miss Brycelyn Davis of Macon, Georgia, Mr. Artavius Jamar McEntee and his wife, Mrs. Noel McEntee of Albany, Georgia, Mrs. Monica Denise McKellar and her husband, Mr. Charles McKellar of Lilly, Georgia, Mrs. Dolores Michelle Anderson and her husband, Mr. Ray Anderson of St. Petersburg, Florida, Mrs. Renata Andrea Woodham and her husband, Mr. Darnell Woodham of Lilly, Georgia, and Ms. Lola Fulana McEntee and her husband, Mr. Richarda McEntee of Albany, Georgia, 27 loving grandchildren, 32 great-grandchildren, his loving sisters, Mrs. Charlie Louise Williams of Bainbridge, Georgia, Mrs. Sarah Frances Mofford, and Mrs. Lily Duhart Toots, both of Warner Robins, Georgia, Mrs. Barbara Faye Goins and her husband, Mr. Arthur Goins of Pineview, Georgia, Mrs. Jacqueline Lewis and her husband, Mr. Alexander Lewis of Hope Mills, North Carolina, Ms. Diane Whitfield of Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Mrs. Donna Howard and her husband, Mr. Marcus Howard of Bon Air, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Wayman McEntee of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Charlie James Rush and his wife, Mrs. Linda Rush of Covington, Georgia, Mr. Billy Joe Whitfield and his wife, Mrs. Cheryl Whitfield of Decatur, Georgia, Mr. Willie Jr. Whitfield of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Jerome Whitfield and his wife, Mrs. Alicia Whitfield of Indianapolis, and Mr. Telly Lamar Whitfield and his wife, Mrs. Joanna Whitfield of Pineview, Georgia. His aunts and uncles, Mrs. Ethel Station and her husband, Mr. James Station of Hyattsville, Maryland, Mr. Essex James Coffin and Mr. Robert Coffin, both of Decatur, Georgia, Mrs. Mary Archibald and her husband, Mr. Ralph Archibald of Jonesboro, Georgia, and Mrs. Thelma Coffin Harper of Cordele, Georgia. His brothers-in-law, Mr. Jimmy Sanders and his wife, Mrs. Patty Sanders of Cordele, Georgia, Deacon Jose Sanders, and Mr. Lewis Sanders and his wife, Mrs. Mamie Sanders, all of Lilly, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Deacon Arthur James McEntee, age 80, of 130 Oak Street, Lilly, Georgia. Little Jace Adore Hawkins, 1 month old, of 505 West 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, October 16th at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The family visitation for little Jace Adore Hawkins was held Wednesday, October 21st at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving parents, Mr. Jeremy Hawkins and Miss Jessica Harvey, both of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved brother, Master Joshua Harvey of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved grandparents, Mr. Charles Dawson and Mrs. Carol Dawson of Cordele, Georgia, and Mrs. Brenda Hawkins of Albany, Georgia. Her aunts and uncles, Mrs. Rashonda McKeever and her husband, Mr. Reginald McKeever, Mrs. Melinda Tuff and her husband, Mr. Camario Tuff, Mr. James Otis Harvey and Mr. Samuel K. Maynor, all of Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Chadrick Hawkins, Miss Lanicia Coe, and Miss Jamesia Henderson, Miss Relexis Henderson, and Miss Jerica Bryant, and Miss Elisa Hawkins, all of Albany, Georgia. A host of other relatives survived little Jace Adore Hawkins, 1 month old, of 505 West 23rd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel, age 74, of 2812 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, October 17th at Navicent Health in Macon, Georgia. The graveside funeral services for Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel was held Saturday, October 24th at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, Reverend Cecil Straughter, pastor of the Gethsemane Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband, Mr. Albert Barthel Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. Her loving and devoted children, Mr. Calvin Barthel and Mrs. Angela Johnson and her husband, Mr. Reginald Johnson, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her Her beloved grandchildren, Mr. Latravius Johnson and his wife, Mrs. Brooke Johnson of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Mr. Keontae Johnson of Cordial, Georgia. 3 great-grandchildren, her loving sister, Mrs. Geraldine Putman, and her husband, Mr. Charles Putman of Cordial, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Mr. Willie James Shorter, and his wife, Mrs. Charlene Shorter of Cordial, Georgia. Her loving aunts, Mother Mary S. Butler and Mother Grace Patrick, both of Cordial, Georgia. Her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Barbara Ann Kendrick, Mrs. Brenda Barthel, and Mrs. Laverne Green, all of Atlanta, Georgia. Several nieces and nephews, to include a special niece, Miss Sabrina Towns of Tifton, Georgia. Her goddaughter, Mrs. Margaret Mobley of Cordial, Georgia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends, to include her special friends, Mr. Anthony Laporte II, and her friends at DaVita Dialysis of Cordial, Georgia, survived Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel, age 74, of 2812 South 10th Street, Cordial, Georgia. Retired educator Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones, age 85, of 1512 Oconee Circle, Cordial, Georgia, died Monday, October 19th at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordial, Georgia. The memorial service for Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones was held Saturday, October 24th, by way of Zoom. Survivors include her loving husband of 60 years, Mr. Irvin Jones of Cordial, Georgia, her loving daughters, Mrs. Jacqueline Dickerson and her husband, Mr. Tony Dickerson, and Mrs. Livia Sutton and her husband, Mr. Eddie Sutton, all of Cordial, Georgia. 7 loving grandchildren, Mr. David Dickerson, Ms. Antonia Dickerson, Mr. Wesley Sutton, Ms. Addison Dickerson, Ms. Adaria Sutton, Ms. Ansley Dickerson, and Ms. Kimbra Sutton, all of Cordial, Georgia. A loving sister, Mrs. Lola Norsworthy of Houston, Texas. Her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Pearl Williams of Tifton, Georgia, Mrs. Berta Addy of Pehokee, Florida, Mrs. Clara Royal and her husband, Mr. John Royal, Mrs. Etta Peacock, Mother Theron Jones, and Miss Addie Lou Jones, Jr., all of Cordial, Georgia. Mrs. Susie Thomas and her husband, Mr. Morris Thomas of Tallahassee, Florida, Mrs. Doris Peacock of Cocoa Beach, Florida, and Mrs. Doretha Peacock of Vienna, Georgia. Her brothers-in-law, Mr. George Jones and his wife, Mrs. Joyce Jones of Springfield, Massachusetts, and Mr. Arthur Jones of Cordial, Georgia. A host of devoted nephews, nieces, and cousins survived Mrs. Retired Educator, Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones, age 85, of 1512 Oconee Circle, Cordial, Georgia. Ms. Louise Denise Barron, age 75, of 113 West 5th Avenue, Cordial, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 7th at the Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital in Albany, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Ms. Louise Denise Barron was held Saturday, October 24th at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordial, Georgia. Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Willie James Thorpe and his wife, Mrs. Melissa Thorpe, Mr. Kelvin Barron Sr. and his wife, Mrs. Rondalyn Barron, Mr. Carl Barron, and Miss Cynthia Barron, all of Cordial, Georgia, and Mr. Nicholas Barron and his wife, Mrs. Michelle Barron of Jacksonville, Florida. 19 loving grandchildren, 14 great-grandchildren, a loving sister, Mother Minnie Bell Denard of Cordial, Georgia, a host of loving nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Ms. Louise Denise Barron, age 75, of 113 West 5th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Again, the family of Deacon Arthur James McEntee of Lilly, Georgia, the family of little Jace Adore Hawkins of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel of Cordele, Georgia, the family of retired educator Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Ms. Louise Denise Barron of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank all of their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors of Cordele and Vienna were in charge of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage, age 74, of 208 Roosevelt Street, Warwick, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st at Navicent Health in Macon, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Henry L. Marsh Jr. of Warwick, Georgia, and Mrs. Sabrina Jones and her husband, Deacon Al Jones of Cordele, Georgia. 2 loving grandchildren, Mr. Dante Morris and Miss Tasia Clark, both of Cordele, Georgia. 1 great-grandchild, her loving siblings, Ms. Ella Mae Williams, Mr. Little Joe Williams, Mr. L.J. Williams, all of Warwick, Georgia, Mrs. Annie Curry of Sylvester, Georgia, Ms. Maddie Sparks of Albany, Georgia, Mrs. Gladys Ray and her companion, Mr. Reginald Polk of Americus, Georgia, Miss Mary Jean Floyd of Americus, Georgia. Her sisters-in-law, Mrs. Thelma Williams and Mrs. Karen Williams, both of Warwick, Georgia, and Miss Winnie Mae Sparks of Jacksonville, Florida. A host of special nieces, nephews, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include her special friend, Mr. Curtis Ludden Sr. of Cordele, Georgia, survived Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage, age 74, of 208 Roosevelt Street, Warwick, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage will be held today, Sunday, October 25th, at the Fort Early Church Cemetery in Warwick, Georgia. Her pastor, Reverend Ivory J. Corbin, pastor of the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, will officiate. Mother Martille Smith Williams, age 80, of 507 South 13th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, October 22nd at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Deacon Michael Smith and his wife, Mrs. Eula Smith, Mr. Frederick Smith, Miss Shonda Smith, and Miss Philandor Felton and her husband, Deacon Charles Felton, all of Cordele, Georgia. 17 loving grandchildren, a special granddaughter who she reared, Ms. Linda Armstrong of Cordele, Georgia. 46 great-grandchildren, 2 loving sisters, Mrs. Lola Floyd of Jacksonville, Florida, and Mrs. Jo Evelyn Jordan of Macon, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mother Martille Smith Williams, age 80, of 507 South 13th Street, Cordial, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mother Martille Smith Williams will be held Wednesday, October 28th at 12 o'clock noon at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordial, Georgia. Her beloved grandson, Dr. Antoine M. Yao, will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Tuesday, October 27th from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Luella Ridley Straughter, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordial, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st at the Cordial Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordial, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted son, Mr. Edward Tyrone Ridley of Cordial, Georgia, her loving and devoted mother, Mother Emma Love Jackson of Cordial, Georgia, a loving sister, Ms. Anita Williams of Cordial, Georgia, her beloved brothers, Mr. Frederick Jackson and Mr. Scotty Jackson, both of Cordial, Georgia, a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins to include her special cousins, Miss Barbara Ann Clay and Mr. Crambia Morrison, a host of other relatives and many sorrowing friends to include her special family friends, Mrs. Jacqueline Ridley, Mrs. Gwendolyn Thomas, Ms. Burrow Patrick, Ms. Clara Dixon, Jalen Jackson, and Ms. Patricia Criddle. Survived Mrs. Luella Ridley Straughter, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordial, Georgia. The funeral service for Ms. Luella Ridley Straughter will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Belinda Ann Jackson, age 47, of 160 Rains Road, Ashburn, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at her residence. Survivors include her loving and devoted daughter, Ms. Chakimbrion Jackson of Ashburn, Georgia, her beloved grandson, Master Zayden Hurd of Ashburn, Georgia, her loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Ernestine Ezel Jackson of Ashburn, Georgia, her loving sisters, Ms. Cassandra Jackson of Ashburn, Georgia, and Ms. Valerie Jackson of Cordial, Georgia, a beloved brother, Mr. Christopher Jackson of Tifton, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorry friends survive. Miss Belinda Ann Jackson, age 47, of 160 Rains Road, Ashburn, Georgia. The funeral service for Ms. Belinda Ann Jackson will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King, age 66, of 1127 South Houston Lake Road, Warner Robins, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at the Heart of Georgia Hospice in Perry, Georgia. Survivors include her loving children, Mrs. Shonda C. West and her husband, Mr. Paolo West, Mr. Edward King Jr. and his fiancée, Mrs. Sophia Howard, both of Warner Robins, Georgia. Her beloved grandchildren, Mr. Shaquem West, Miss Germany West, Miss Paris West, Miss London West, and Mr. Samari West, Miss Felice Almond, Mr. Joaquin King, and Miss Brooklyn King. Her loving and devoted mother, Mother Evelyn Smith, of Vienna, Georgia, her loving sisters, Miss Peggy Smith, Miss Angela Smith, Miss Margaret Rembert and her husband, Mr. Timothy Rembert, and Miss Jacqueline Peterson. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Andrew Smith and his wife, Mrs. Deborah Smith, Mr. Marcus Smith and his wife, Mrs. Joni Smith, Mr. Jerome Smith and his wife, Mrs. Shawn Smith, and Mr. Nelvis Smith, a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorry friends survive. Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King, of age 66, of 1127 South Houston Lake Road, Warner Robins, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr., age 59, of 102 Charlie Lee Circle, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at his residence. Survivors include a loving and devoted daughter, Mrs. Tamika Mercer of Jacksonville, Florida, a beloved granddaughter, Miss Taylor Mercer of Jacksonville, Florida, his loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Mary Williams Nance of Cordele, Georgia, his loving and caring siblings, Mr. James E. Nance, Miss Marion J. Nance, Miss Laura A. Glover and her husband, Mr. Paul Glover, Ms. Mary L. Nance, Mr. Marvin D. Nance and his wife, Mrs. Nicole Nance, Mrs. Angela D. Hall and her husband, Mr. Alonzo Hall, Mr. Melvin E. Nance and Mrs. Tina D. Hoggerbrook and her husband, Mr. Andrew Hoggerbrook Sr., all of Jacksonville, Florida. A host of nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr., age 59, of 102 Charlie Lee Circle, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr. will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Air Force veteran Mr. John Spivey of 593 Felton Avenue, Byronville, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at his residence. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Janet Spivey of Byronville, Georgia, a loving daughter, Miss Anjanette Spivey of Byronville, Georgia, his beloved grandchildren, Tizaya Mann and Michael Mann Jr., both of Byronville, Georgia, his loving sisters, Mrs. Mary Spivey Eason of Decatur, Georgia, and Miss Katie Spivey of New York, a caring brother, Mr. Willie Glenn Spivey of Greensboro, North Carolina, a host of cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. United States Air Force veteran, Mr. John Spivey, age 68, of 593 Felton Avenue, Byronville, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Air Force veteran, Mr. John Spivey, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors of Cordele and Vienna are in charge of these arrangements during this week. As always, we like to remind you concerning the advanced funeral planning that's available at J.W. Williams Funeral Home. We invite you to give us a call that we might set up an appointment for you to come by and to discuss advanced funeral planning that's available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. We'd also like to remind you that whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. We have a licensed insurance agent on staff, and they'll be so glad to sit down and discuss with you any of your concerns and needs that you might have regarding advanced funeral planning and also whole life insurance. If you have not exercised your right to vote, please be reminded that Crisp County will have Sunday voting today, Sunday, October 25th, from 1 p.m. until 7 o'clock p.m. at the Crisp County Government Building, the old courthouse, located on West 13th Avenue. There's a sign displayed, "Vote Here." Let's take advantage of every opportunity to exercise our rights. Again, Sunday voting is made available today for the citizens of Crisp County. Sunday voting will begin today at 1 o'clock p.m. and continue to 7 o'clock p.m. Please take advantage of this right that you have. In conjunction with our Sunday voting, you are also reminded that early voting will continue throughout this week from 8 o'clock a.m. until 6 o'clock p.m. at the Crisp County Government Building, the old courthouse. For those needing assistance when you reach the voting site, please know that the volunteer poll workers are available to assist you in casting your vote for your chosen candidates. To further aid you in getting to the polls to vote, the J.W. Williams Funeral Home will be offering free rides to the polls beginning Monday, October 26th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., Tuesday, October 27th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., Wednesday, October 28th, from 2 until 5 o'clock p.m., Thursday, October 29th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., Friday, October 30th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. Please call the funeral home at 229-273-2683 if you would like to have a ride between these hours to the polls to vote. Please be reminded that in accordance with keeping safety, your hands and shoes will be sanitized before entering the vehicle each time, and everyone must supply and wear a mask. Bring your mask, and please know that you will be asked to keep the mask on while riding in the vehicles. Again, a ride to the polls will be made available by the J.W. Williams Funeral Home beginning Monday, October 26th from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., Tuesday, October 27th from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., Wednesday, October 28th, 2 o'clock until 5 o'clock p.m. Please note that time that on Wednesday, October 28th, it will be from 2 until 5 o'clock p.m. Thursday, October 29th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., and Friday, October 30th, from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. Call the funeral home at 229-273-2683 to schedule a ride between these hours. Again, you are reminded that your hands and shoes will be sanitized before entering the vehicle each time, and everyone is asked to please wear a mask. As we continue this morning with our announcements, you're invited to worship with the New Poplar Spring Baptist Church this morning, Sunday morning worship service beginning at 9:45 a.m., Wednesday evening worship at 6:45 p.m. via conference call, and you may call in at 253-993-3761. Again, that number is 253-993-3761. Pastor Johnny Dean and the congregation will be so happy to have you share with them. You're invited to worship with the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church by way of conference call beginning this morning. You're invited to worship with them beginning at the 9 o'clock hour. Also, Tuesday midday prayer service will begin at 12 o'clock noon. Thursday prayer meeting and Bible study is held at 6 o'clock p.m. The conference call number is 229-329-7611. Again, that number is 229-329-7611. Dr. K.M. Williams and the members of the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church, Mother Lucille Shazier, Church Mother, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Chairman of Deacons, will be so happy to have you share with them during their worship hour. The Cordial Rotary Club will distribute fuel boxes to area churches on Saturday, October 31st, beginning at 9 o'clock a.m. Boxes may be picked up at the Cordial Lions Club here in Cordial. Each church is asked to send a representative, and each church will be issued 25 boxes. Again, that's Saturday, October 31st, 9 o'clock a.m., the Cordial Rotary Club food distribution. The boxes will include meat and vegetables, and churches of the community will be given 25 boxes to distribute amongst their congregants. That's Saturday, October 31st. Churches are asked to send one representative that will pick up the 25 boxes, and then they in turn will distribute those amongst those congregants. Remember, that's Saturday, October 31st at 9 o'clock a.m. As we continue this morning with our dedications, we will begin with our campaign dedications. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to Colonel Eric D. Bryan, candidate for the Sumter County Sheriff, Mr. Kenneth Hamilton, candidate for the Sumter County Commissioner, District 5, Ms. Tawny Buffy Edward, candidate for Sumter County Tax Commissioner, Dr. Brooks Robinson, candidate for the Sumter County Board of Education, Mr. Dwight Harris Sr., who's a candidate for the Sumter County Board of Education, District 7. Dedicate this to Dr. Elizabeth Maddox and her husband, Deacon James Maddox. And Dr. Maddox is a candidate for the Crisp County Board of Education, where she's the incumbent for that seat. We also dedicate this election this morning to my family, as I'm a candidate for the Chief Magistrate of Crisp County here in Cordial. And also, we dedicate this selection to Mr. Tim Robinson, candidate for the Dooley County Commissioner, District 4. This election this morning is also being dedicated in love and memory of Mrs. Liza Barrett, who departed this life October 3rd, 2016. Dedication requested by her husband, Deacon Sammy Barrett, her children, grandchildren, and the entire Barrett and Crawford families, and all of her many friends, as we pause to remember the life of United States Army veteran Mrs. Liza Barrett, gone but not forgotten. In love and memory of infant Octavius Davis, who departed this life October the 11th, 1980, dedication requested by his mother, Miss Mary Frances Davis. In love and memory of Big Ma, as I knew her affectionately, Mother Annie Claude Telfair, who would have celebrated her birthday on October 24th. Dedication is requested by her loving granddaughter, Miss Vivian Telfair, her son, Chief Augustus C. Telfair Jr., and the entire Telfair family, as we pause to remember and celebrate Big Mama's birthday, which would have been on October 24th. Gone but not forgotten. In love and memory of Ms. Eddie Mae Davis, who departed this life October 28, 2001, and who would have celebrated her birthday on October 28th. Dedication requested by her sister, Miss Mary Frances Davis, and the entire Davis family. In love and memory of Miss Cornelia Jackson, who departed this life October 31st, 2008. Dedication requested by her children, Mrs. Jackie Leonard, Mr. Quincy Lucas, Miss Dorothy Lucas, Mrs. Barbara Lane, Mrs. Betty Walker, and Mr. Ray Jackson, and the entire family, and as well as the members of the Shady Grove Baptist Church, where she served so faithfully during her lifetime. They pause to remember her life. We'd like to take this opportunity to wish a very special happy wedding anniversary, happy 38th wedding anniversary to Mr. Richard and Mrs. Brenda Cross, who celebrated their anniversary on Monday, October 19th. Also, happy birthday to Mr. Richard Cross, who is celebrating his birthday today, Sunday, October 25th. Dedications requested by the entire family. Happy birthday and happy anniversary, and may God bless each of you to see many, many more. We also would like to say happy anniversary to Deacon Earl and Mrs. Faye Leary, who celebrated their anniversary on Friday, October 23rd. Dedication requested by their children, Tremaine and Summer, their grandchildren, the entire Leary, West, and Ross families. Happy anniversary, and may God bless your union and keep it strong. We pause at this time to say happy birthday to Mr. Herman Jackson, who celebrated his birthday on Thursday, October 22nd. Dedication requested by the Jackson family and his sister-in-law, Ms. Cassandra Jackson. Happy birthday to Miss Patricia Leary, who celebrated her birthday on Saturday, October 24th. Dedication requested by her children, DeAndrea and Keandrea, her grandchildren, the Leary and Carter families. Happy birthday to Mrs. Shamika Jackson Clark, who celebrated her birthday on Saturday, October 24th. Dedication requested by her husband, Mr. Octavius Clark, her children, Scooter, Tristan, and her mother, Mrs. Cassandra Jackson. Happy birthday to Mr. Shelton West, who resides in Ohio, who will celebrate his birthday on Monday, October 26th. Dedication requested by his aunt, Miss Mary Frances Davis, and all of his many friends here in the Cordele area. We say happy birthday to Mr. Shelton West. Happy birthday to Master Justin Colbert Jr., who will celebrate his birthday on Friday, October 30th. Dedication requested by his parents, grandparents, and Miss May Frances Davis. I'd like to take this opportunity also to dedicate this selection this morning to Miss Mary Kendrick and family, Deacon Dennis Harrison family, Minister Pamela Harrison family, Mr. and Mrs. Ricky Hardeman and family, for Miss Shalonda Donaldson and family, for Mrs. Debbie Cross and family, for Mrs. Tommy Glenn and family, for Mr. Judge Glenn, for Mother Jessie Ezel, for Mother Willeen McGill, for Miss Burl Patrick and family, for Miss Mary Taylor and family, Deacon Zachary and Mrs. Lavetta Fields and family, for the entire Holmes family, for Mother Martha Ruth Westbrook and family. The selection this morning is also being dedicated to Reverend Donnie and Mrs. Amanda Hall, for Reverend Plessy Nelson and family, for Reverend Jesse Watts and family, Reverend Willie James Felton and family, Deacon and Mrs. Sammy Mumphrey and family, for Mrs. Betty Epps and family, Miss Latasha Smith and family, Miss Rosa Epps and family, Miss Vera Carter and family, for Miss Dorothy Paul and family, for Miss Val Carter and family, for Mr. F.D. Lawton and family, Mrs. Barbara Robertson family, for Miss Latasha Walker and family, the Carter family, Mr. Sean Hutchinson family, Miss Shamika Jackson and family, for Miss Vivian Daniels and family, for Miss Jackie Lattimore and family. This selection this morning is also being dedicated to Mrs. Lottie Talbert and family, the Epps and Lawton family, Miss Sarah Jackson and family, for Miss Patricia White and family, for Deacon Henry King and family, for Miss Wilhelmina Williams and family, for Mother Fannie Mae James and family, for Mother Mary Picola Jackson and family, for Mrs. Gwen Jackson and family, for Pastor and First Lady Darrell Leggett and family, Missionary Irene and Reverend L.C. Cantrell and family, Ms. Clarinell Carter and family, for Mrs. Mary Wellens and family, Deacon Vet T. and Mrs. Willie Mae Crane and family, also for twins, Ms. Betty and Ms. Brenda Webb of Unadilla, Georgia, for Mrs. Doris Wise and family, for Dr. Beverly Bolden and family, for Mr. Chester McWilliams and family, for Mr. Kelvin and Mrs. Carol Morell and family, for Mr. George and Mrs. Annette Felton and family, for Reverend and Mrs. Jeff Wilson and family, Reverend and Mrs. Nelson Maynard and family, Reverend Gregory and Minister Denise Williams and family, for Reverend and Mrs. Cecil Straughter and family, for Dr. and Mrs. Dwayne Daniels and family, for Reverend Ivory and Mrs. Dorothy Corbin and family, for Reverend Joseph Atkins and family, Reverend Joseph Green and family, Dr. and Mrs. Bobby G. West and family, Dr. Ruby Jackson and family, Deacon Johnny and Dr. Diane Minister Johnny and Dr. Diane Hosley and family, for Mrs. Lily K. Granville Cotton and family, for Mrs. Betty Robertson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Mulford Robertson Jr. and family, for Mrs. Gladys Foster and family, for Mr. Carlin Foster and family. The selection this morning is also being dedicated to Deacon Earl Leary and family, for Mother Mary Jean Mumphrey and family, Mother Jessie K. Harmon and family, Mrs. Eddie Mae Cooks and family, for the Bryant family of the Drayton community, Mrs. Lily Mae Rockwell and family, Ms. Jackie Balin and family, for the McAdoo family, Mr. Calvin Smith and family, for Mrs. Martha Hayes and family, Mr. Harold Bryant and family, Mr. and Mrs. John L. Williams and family, Mrs. Betty Rivers and family, for Commissioner and Mrs. A.J. Rivers and family, for Mr. Tyrone and Mrs. Angela Walker and family, for Reverend Terrell Tate and family, for Mr. Larry Bryan and family, Mr. Alvin Adams and family, for Mrs. Helen Dean and family, Mr. Hinton Dean and family. The selection this morning is also being dedicated to Mr. Lorenzo Jones and family. Our first selection this morning. we make the following announcements. Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage, age 74, of 208 Roosevelt Street, Warwick, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st at Navicent Health in Macon, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage will be held today, Sunday, October 25th, at the Fort Early Church Cemetery in Warwick, Georgia. Her pastor, Reverend Ivory Joe Corbin, pastor of the Mount Moriah Baptist Church, will officiate. Mother Martille Smith Williams, age 80, of 507 South 13th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, October 22nd at the Crisp Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The graveside funeral service for Mother Martille Smith Williams will be held Wednesday, October 28th at 12 o'clock noon at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved grandson, Dr. Antoine M. Yao, will officiate. The public walk-up visitation will be held Tuesday, October 27th from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Luella Ridley Straughter, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Luella Ridley Straughter will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Ms. Belinda Ann Jackson, age 47, of 160 Rains Road, Ashburn, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at her residence. The funeral service for Ms. Belinda Ann Jackson will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King, age 66, of 1127 South Houston Lake Road, Warner Robins, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at the Heart of Georgia Hospice in Perry, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr., age 59, of 102 Charlie Lee Circle, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at his residence. The funeral service for Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr. will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Air Force veteran Mr. John Spivey of 593 Felton Avenue, Byronville, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th at his residence. The funeral service for United States Air Force veteran Mr. John Spivey will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors of Cordele and Vienna are in charge of these arrangements during this week. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Deacon Arthur James McEntee of Lilly, Georgia, the family of little Jace Adore Hawkins of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Benny Mae Shorter Barthel of Cordele, Georgia, the family of retired educator Mrs. Dorothy Peacock Jones of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Ms. Louise Denise Barron of Cordele, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Mrs. Susan Williams Hardage of Warwick, Georgia, the family of Mother Martille Smith Williams of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Ms. Luella Straughter of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Ms. Belinda Ann Jackson of Ashburn, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Mary Jo Smith King of Warner Robins, Georgia, the family of Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of United States Air Force veteran Mr. John Spivey of Byronville, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to all of our sick and shut-ins, to all of our patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, rehabilitation centers, to our ministers and their spouses and family, to our retired educators, to the men and women serving in the armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program each and every Sunday morning. It is a pleasure for us to bring this program to you. Our program this morning is dedicated in love and memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. We dedicate our program this morning on behalf of our President, CEO, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, and his wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkinson Parker, and their son, John Wilkinson Parker. And to each of you who have tuned in this morning, we're so thankful that you have joined us this morning. And again, we wish to remind you, for those of you who have not taken the opportunity to exercise your right to vote, that Sunday voting is available today here in Crisp County, and you are reminded that the polls will be opening today at 1 o'clock p.m. and they will stay open until 7 o'clock p.m. We encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity to exercise your right to vote. Please get out and exercise your right to vote. And we especially challenge all of our young people who are registered to vote to please take advantage of this time to go vote. Sunday voting is available today from 1 o'clock p.m. until 7 o'clock p.m. at the Crisp County Government Building. And again, we remind you that if you need a ride to the polls this week, so please call the funeral home at 229-273-2683, and we will make available a ride for you. Rides will be available Monday and Tuesday from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m., on Wednesday from 2 until 5 o'clock p.m., Thursday and Friday from 1 until 5 o'clock p.m. So please take advantage of all the early voting procedures that have been set up for us, that we might take the opportunity to exercise our right to vote. And then we remind you, if you do not take advantage of early voting, that you may cast your ballot on Tuesday, November the 3rd, for the candidate of your choice. Again, Tuesday, November the 3rd is our election day, but you have several opportunities prior to that time to exercise your right to vote. We thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to share with you this morning. Until next Sunday morning, we bid each of you a pleasant and safe week. Our final selection this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
Some of these days, well,